get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Kelly Sinclair. You can check her out at KS&Co.ca. And Kelly, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes of the podcast people should check out. Since this is part of the Top Women Leaders series, I had Jess Gallica on, who started and founded Reclaim Your Career. So she kind of helps high-performing women in corporate transform their career trajectories. That was a really interesting one. And Pivot, she also wrote a book around it. Corinne Millian also specializes in HR and staffing. And really, she works with colleges and helps get really high-performing interns for some of these companies, and gets them great experience, gets the companies great staff that also can stay on later and be long-term staff for that company. Another good one was Winnie Hart of Twin Engine. She also has a book and has an amazing company, Twin Engine, because she actually has an identical twin. So check that one out as well. And more episodes on InspiredInsider.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. Rise 25, we help you give to and connect to your dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. Kelly has a podcast. She's a big proponent of podcasting as well. We do the accountability, the strategy, and the full execution. So Kelly, we call ourselves the magic elves that run in the background to make it look easy for the host and the company so they can create amazing content, amazing relationships, and most importantly, run their business. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. And I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com or email me at support@rise25.com. I'm excited to introduce Kelly Sinclair. She's CEO of KS&Co, ksco.ca. She hosts the Entrepreneur School podcast, an education hub for ambitious women or anyone really who wants to be ambitious and learn more about branding strategy, visibility. She works with people one-on-one. She also has group coaching programs and much more. So Kelly, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeremy. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time.
So start us off and just talk about KS&Co and what you do.
Yes. So KS&Co has been an evolution for the last several years for me. And what we do primarily is we support entrepreneurs and small business organizations with building their brands and getting visibility so that they can build their audiences and grow. Because if you don't put yourself out there, if you don't create an audience, you don't have leads, you don't have sales. And so for solopreneurs and small businesses, which is where I'm primarily focused right now, that's really about finding the ways to get in front of the right people so that you can get your message out there and ultimately build those relationships. And I love how you said relationships is the core of what you do. That's definitely the foundation for me when it comes to visibility as well. And then for any nonprofit groups or associations that I work with as well, this is about bigger picture awareness, thinking about how to broaden the message for their overall mission and mandate.
You cut your teeth in some pretty big companies in communications. So if you're listening to Kelly, how'd she gain all this knowledge? Talk about some of the experience and what you learned that you bring into what you do now. I know you worked with BP, National Public Relations, some big companies. What did you learn there that you bring into this company?
So unlike a lot of entrepreneurs, which is surprising to me, I actually am still doing what I went to school to do, which is PR. But I love that PR and why I knew it was the right fit for me as well is because there's such a broad reach and what that actually means. It's about figuring out who you are, who you're talking to, and how to get that message in front of the right people. And so what's the goal of that message, whether it's to provide information, education, to help shift somebody's perspectives. A lot of what work that I did in the PR agency I worked for before and in corporate oil and gas here in Calgary was definitely, about shifting perceptions and helping people to see different ways of looking at things. And when I decided to start my own business and specifically focus on entrepreneurs, and I thought about how do you translate that skill, it's just about what are you getting your audience to try and do? What are you helping them to see? What are the perspectives that they need to be aware of and that you can shift for them that will help them ultimately realize that they need to work with you or buy your thing?
Can you talk about that for a second? I think it's interesting, shifting perceptions and maybe an example from, like, it could have been from National Public Relations, BP, or anything, and you can keep the who of the sources anonymous. But what was an example of something that happened and then how you had to help the company or the person shift perception?
Yeah, I mean, I worked a lot in crisis communication, so that's always like an interesting example. And yes, I was at BP during the major crisis that happened there. So that was a really interesting learning ground for public relations. And I was actually working in internal communications. So that was about like talking to the people about what's happening in this company and how people are perceiving our company.
That's huge because the morale of the staff is largely how it's going to affect the company in a huge way.
Yes. And ultimately, like the costs from that incident resulted in divestitures of the company. And so then dealing with people like literally sitting around waiting to be sold and how do you keep people like engaged and feeling proud about working? There was a very challenging job. I will definitely say that. And so it was just, I think a lot
What do
of
you
it
do to
comes down
boost morale in that situation?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I was talking to someone the other day on the show and something similar, right? Something happened with the company. They lost a client. And even just, I mean, it's not as big as something happened to VP, but to them, it felt huge. How do they communicate that to the team so people don't lose, energy and morale? So
Mhm.
what do you do with the company?
I think the top thing is to listen. So it's about engagement, right? It's not about what is our message that we need to tell people and try and get them to believe things. It's about what are they worried about? What is keeping them up at night? What are they thinking about? And that again is a really interesting, you're like connecting some dots for me too. And like this transferability of the skill set is that when you as a business owner are thinking about what you're creating and the message you have and what you want to sell, it's really about understanding what your audience wants and needs because of what they think their challenge is, not what you know it actually might be.
So in that situation, or whatever, something happens in the VP, would you go to the team members and say, hey, here's what happened. Like, what do you think about it? Instead of trying to spin a certain narrative?
I mean, ideally, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it would be like we had lots
So
of
it's a
town halls.
more of a conversation than
Yeah,
like,
lots of
here, we're just going to putting
conversations.
out this narrative and hope people believe it or whatever. It's more putting it to them and saying, hey, like, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah. Yes. And we had a great leader at BB Canada at the time, I have to say. I felt like I was like 23. And so she's like the president. She's coming down and sitting on my desk and asking me what should she do? And I'm going, why? Why are you asking me? I don't know. But I would like, let's talk to
You're
people.
thrown in the fire right away,
Oh
right?
my gosh, so much. Let's talk to people and see what they're concerned about. Like, because, if your neighbors know that you work for this company and they think this company is terrible because, CNN is certainly portraying it that way, then what are they dealing with like over the fence in their backyard or, with their kids on the street? That was a really serious consideration.
No, that's hugely valuable to hear from you because I don't know, like I maybe sometimes just jump to, okay, we got to put this message out there, but it's really talk to people, see what they're concerned about. And I feel like it's translatable too when we'll talk about the evolution of your services a little bit, which is the same thing. You talk to the customers, see what they want, see what their pain points are, instead of trying to put something out there that may not hit. So talk about, and I know you worked at the company, and unfortunately you had something tragic happen where your mom had breast cancer, and then you're like, you could probably relate to the interview I was saying, like a career change. Like, I can't do this anymore. You needed balance. You kind of saw the priorities for you, and you're like, I'm not doing this corporate thing, and family is more important. And you had kids at the time, so you changed course. What did you start off? So you're like, okay, I'm gonna do something different. What did you start off doing? We can kind of take the path.
Yeah. So I was at the PR firm at the time when my mom passed away, and I had taken a leave of absence just before, as I was seeing kind of like the end is near. And it was way more near than I knew. Unfortunately, it was actually 8 days
It's terrible.
after
Holy cow.
I was like, finally had the realization. And so, that it's so cliche when they're like, life is short, right? And you don't know until you really know. Like, if you have had a personal loss in any way, you really understand this in a different level than maybe you thought you did beforehand. And I looked at what I was doing and how I was spending my time. And I remember, like, I lived just outside of Calgary, so I had to get downtown before rush hour. My husband was driving. I was a zombie. I had a thermos of coffee to refill my coffee mug before I got to, I could have used an IV. I was like, just caffeinate me. I'm dying. Like, I was up before 5 a.m. To me, that should never happen in my life. I'm not a morning person. We got the kids out. They were 6 a.m. at day home, and I picked them up at 5:30. They were hangry. I fed them. They went to bed. We did it again the next day. And I was like, what is going on? This is not the life that I said that I wanted. And I don't see an end in this unless I make a big change. And then the universe changed it for me. So when I left my job after losing my mom, I took some time to just go, what should I do? And then I realized, well, I know how to be a consultant, because that's what I was doing inside of a PR firm, being a consultant. And that seems like a pretty simple business model. Like, I will do work for you. It will cost X dollars per hour, and you will pay me. Done. What can I do? I can do all these PR services. I can do messaging. I can do media relations. I can do strategy. I can do brand development. And when I started thinking about it, how I was going to get myself out there and make a name for myself. So P.S. the story will come for full circle in a minute. When you realize that that's the way you have to get clients, I looked in the newspaper and I saw an event that was happening, which I went to, and I met my first client, which was a co-working organization, like a co-working facility that opened here. It was the first one of its kind. They now have 5 locations, which is amazing. And then I got my second client, which was the Cochrane Tourism Association. I ended up working with them for 5 years on doing their in-house marketing and branding. Basically, we did a whole project, which I loved, which was developing the brand for Cochrane as a destination. So that was about figuring out, how do we make this location stand out from Calgary and Banff and all the places that are around us? I don't know if you've been this way.
I was just in Banff this past summer. I'm like, how do you compete with Banff? Right. So.
Right. Well, you got to try and get people to stop here on the way. That's what you have to do. Yes. So it was and the way that I did that was through engagement, was through creating public engagement. We did a survey.
This is them, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
cool.
Yes. That I haven't been on the website in a long time, but yeah. Yeah, we created all this. It actually, you can't even see it's the feeling anymore. Anyways, maybe they've evolved from there too, as brands do. They evolve. That's all fine. So
you're saying they did a survey?
We did a survey to get people's opinions on what is it that you love about Cochrane? Why should people want to come here? And to try and make it more than we're famous for ice cream currently. So how do we expand beyond the ice cream and make, people come for more than 30 minutes? So we created this brand called It's the Feeling, because we're in this beautiful valley. You come down the valley, you see the mountains, there's a river. It is beautiful. It's warm and welcoming and inviting. And that all came out of like connecting with the people who are around here to get input, to get feedback on how we can message and position this to who we're trying to reach.
Yeah, no, I love that. It seems, again, like a pattern of asking, right? Surveying and coming up with answers coming straight from the people. What's interesting about the story, so I want to dig into the co-working space for a second. So I don't want to gloss over it because, okay, you see this in the newspaper, you go, okay, most people are like, yeah, I mean, I'm not introverted, but I'm definitely in a crowd, just kind of shy. So you decide, okay, I'm going to go, and you come out of that with a client, right? So how did the conversation start? What did you say? You know, this is your first client, so you seem pretty confident, like right off the bat. What did you say to get this client? How did it come about?
That's such a good question, because he was like trying to create co-working before there was a space for co-working, right? So the event was actually at a coffee shop because he didn't have a space yet. So he was already like building his community and trying to create the connection and people and show the value of getting out of your house, which I 100% support. Like there's just days where I'm like, I need to get out of this basement that I'm in, right? And see people and interact and see what's going on. And I don't know, I think we just started talking about his launch and how to open a new like space and how to get recognition for that and become like a known name in the community, especially when it was something that was different. So I think I for sure was starting with the media opportunity in that, because this is new. This is the first of its kind in the community. And we will, create a plan. We'll create a launch event. We'll do media for it. And to be honest with you, part of the negotiation for the client was I worked in his co-working space as part of like my fee, basically. So he gave me, I don't know, a year in there. There's still my very first logo up on the wall. I've changed it a couple of times since, but it's really cute when I go in there now for a meeting or just he actually has a UPS drop-off site, which I think was really good for traffic for him. That wasn't my idea. It was his. It was great. So that was where we started having the conversation, like, what are the opportunities? How can you, get your name out there? And how can I support you with the things you don't know how to do? Because as a business owner, and especially if you're opening like a physical space, you've got lease negotiations and all of these other things, like figuring out like renovations and whatnot. You're not thinking about marketing. Like nobody usually gets into business to become a marketer. They get into business to do the thing they want to do with their business.
Yeah, I love the part too, there's stuff from businesses that sometimes are valuable to us as well. So like a little bit of barter in there. I remember I had Dan Zawacki, who created Lobstergram, who's sending live lobsters to people. Now, I mean, at the time that was kind of novel. Now there's companies that do that, but he wanted, I think it was Lexus as a client. So he just asked he's like, I want a Lexus. Like I want a new car. And they gave him a new car and he did I forgot, send them to their best customers, these lobsters. So I love that. He's like, I need a co-working space. Can we throw that in too? And it's helpful to both of you. The evolution of services. So you start off, you're like, okay, I know PR. I'm going to do PR consulting. I'm going to do these things for the clients. What was the next kind of evolution of KS&Co?
Yeah. So when I had that realization that there is a very clear ceiling on getting paid hourly, you can only raise your rates so much, especially when you're working with small businesses and nonprofit organizations, that you need to think about different ways to scale. And this would probably be around 2020, 2019, when online education was really starting to blow up. And Tony Robbins was going around talking about how it was going to be a $2 billion a day industry and all this stuff. And like, I was like, yeah, I'm going to buy into that because, the opportunity to reach more people at one time and because you can make more impact that way, which is truly what I'm all about. That was really enticing to me. So I was kind of doing the consulting thing with half of my time and then building an online business with the other half of my time. So almost like having a whole new business to create, to learn how to do training online and hosting courses online and having sales and figuring out like what kind of shopping cart do I use? How do I do e-commerce? Like, how do I make these little mock-up graphics and talk about
beautiful.
these things? Canva is the answer to that. All of those, that all started evolving from on the side of my desk kind of situation. So I feel like there was a period of time where I was doing some of that. I was teaching some group programs live on Zoom and then turning them into courses and putting them wherever. I don't even know if the first one was literally just like hosting the course in a private YouTube thread. Like there's just been so many iterations of the things you think you need to have in place when you get started versus the reality if you're just delivering something that people want and that's helpful and that gets them results.
So you're a half PR. Now you're like, listen, I need to leverage my time, and courses, digital courses are definitely scalable. Then what was next after that?
Yeah. So digital courses had their moment in the sun where everyone was like, yeah, I'm going to buy all these things. And, I remember my first webinar that I did that somebody bought one of my courses on the webinar. I was like, it's real. It can happen. Oh my gosh. Literally.
How did you decide to price your courses at the time?
Oh, that's a great question. I think a little bit of this, to be honest, like what feels like good for like what I would feel non-resentful myself in accepting for what time I'm going to put into this. And at the other side of it was like, obviously what feels like a good price point. I think for digital products, really anything under $1,000 is really kind of accessible. And knowing that when I was launching something new and it wasn't built yet, people were then paying me to create it, which also felt really good.
Yeah, that's huge. Anytime we've done a course, to validate it, we've definitely pre-sold it and then create it just like you did. Because then you're not doing a 20 hours, 30, 40 hours of work and then realizing no one wants this.
Making it so beautiful. I mean, I've done that too, sort of.
So next, you have the courses. What's next?
Yeah. So I feel like once like courses were, there's a lot of courses out there. And now there's almost in the online space a bit of like hesitation and resistance around digital programs because, to be fair, a lot of people put out kind of junky stuff that didn't do a lot because they thought that, there's a great opportunity. And, if I just sell a lot of these things at $67 or $97 or whatever it is, that I'm going to make a lot of money. And, letting the results not be the primary goal. And I'm not about that. And I do think that because that's happened in the online space, people are now looking. One, they're being a bit more hesitant and they're being more conscious about how they're spending their money. And they want more customization and more hands-on support and more like, I believe this is going to help me because you're going to help me directly. Like there's more of a communication. There's not just like, oh, I bought this course from this big name course person and I never get to talk to that person. So where I'm at right now is creating containers that are more supportive in that way, that provide customized visibility strategies. So Jeremy, we go through exactly what your business goals are, who you want to reach, and the ways in which you like to get visible. Like you love podcasting, you love collaborating, you don't love going to networking events. That's great. So let's figure out the way that's going to work best for you. And then work together in a group container after that for implementation, because it's nice to be like, here's my plan. It's all mapped out. I don't want to do it. Or I'll come up with all the excuses to not make that a priority. And it's really important to make visibility a priority because these are the things, the seeds that you're planting that are eventually going to grow. And one little seed every day for 10 minutes a day is going to create incredible results through the ripple effect of when those all start to bloom. And I actually feel like being on this podcast is a great example that I love to like sort of trace back, like, where did this come from? How did this happen? What are the 7 steps of separation that got us here together today? And I don't specifically know how you found me, but I know that you wouldn't have found me if I wasn't out doing stuff.
So with the individual one-on-one coaching, and then there's the group coaching too, do they have to enter into one-on-one to get into the group coaching, or do people sometimes just enter straight into the group coaching program?
So my group right now is actually a hybrid. So if you want to be part of the group, the Brand Visibility Accelerator, it's not even on my website right now because it's literally brand new. You get one-on-one attention as part of that. If you are only looking for one-on-one, that's a separate opportunity as well. And I have worked with, most recently a clothing store that was opening in our community. They wanted a launch plan. They wanted to know, like, how do I integrate into this community? How do I, not just hang the open sign and expect people to come in, but actually like go to where the people are and do pop-up shops and collaborations. And so I put together that whole strategy for them and just work with them individually on implementing it as well.
Yeah. So the group, there's one-on-one built into the group program. I gotcha. Talk about the clothing company for a second, and some of the things that you worked on with them and what worked.
Yeah, so I think that retail is interesting. I love actually just working with different types of industries, because I think that's where innovation comes from, right? Where you borrow an idea from something
100%.
else, and you're like, see how this can apply here in this situation. So I have not worked very directly, I guess a little bit here and there on kind of more training for retail and businesses with storefronts, but I haven't necessarily done that. And I'm like, what would be really cool? Like, how can we even take these online strategies that for me work really well, like collaborations and getting in front of other people's audiences, and how can we apply that in the retail space here? So recommendations in her plan that I created were things like going to events that were going to already be attracting and gathering the audience that she's wanting to reach, and doing this before she opens the door. So kind of creating that anticipation around like, we're coming soon. Here's where we're going to be. Here's like look, feel, and touch our products, pre-selling stuff, just getting a lot of exposure and creating some relationships, finding other businesses that might be able to offer like pop-up opportunities. So like we're cross-pollinating. We're really like creating those collaborations. And when you collaborate with somebody, you have automatic earned trust. Because when the other person is saying like, when Jeremy, you're having me here, people who trust you are going to trust me more than if they just found me by myself. It's huge credibility.
Yeah. So going to where the audience is, creating anticipation, even sometimes, pre-selling things, and also partnerships, going out to other people, cross-pollinating and helping each other. Anything else that you found was really beneficial for the clothing company?
Yeah, so we also did a VIP exclusive event. So she had 2 events, like a grand opening event with a big splash, so that there was a media opportunity in that. And then a VIP event where we reached out to people who are really active in the community. And this was in Cochrane specifically, where my skill set and my relationships came in really handy, because I know a lot of people and the business owners, et cetera. So was able to create those connections, but she was able to like invite the radio show host and people who like, she's an athletic and casual wear kind of boutique. So, anybody who was in the health and fitness space, those are kind of the key
The
stakeholders.
influencers, some of the VIP influencers.
The micro influencers.
Micro.
Exactly.
No, I love what you said.
One person can reach 20 people, and that's more powerful than you trying to find 20 by yourself.
100%. Yeah, I love what you said about the innovation. I remember I was listening to Perry Marshall He was on the podcast. He wrote 80/20 Sales and Marketing and some other books. And he always said, and I don't know if he came up with it or whatever, but innovation comes from outside industry. And one of the examples he gave, again, you'll have to fact check this because I haven't, but that with the Apple computer, the charger, the magnetic charger came from like a coffee machine, one of the coffee machine plugins, so that if someone hit it, it wouldn't spill on someone. It just, came off. So I always think when I'm plugging in the Mac, charger to my laptop, I'm like, oh, this came from outside industry, from a coffee machine or whatever.
I heard something like that before with like the little spring in a ballpoint pen. I think that was either from aviation or they then took that into the aviation industry, like one or the other. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. First of all, Kelly, I have one last question for you. Before I ask it, I want to point people, if you've been watching the video, you've seen we pulled up the site. You can check it out, ksco.ca, and check out Kelly's website, what they're doing. I was going to say last question, but this is my second to last question. Who's some of your favorite guests you've had on the podcast?
Ooh, oh, well, that's like asking me to pick my favorite child.
Yeah, I mean, I think on a certain day, that's easy, as you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had some great guests, and I have some really great upcoming guests too. That
by the time this goes live, maybe they are not upcoming; they're
exactly.
live. So,
okay, I'm going to tell a quick little story actually, because it ties all of this together. As a podcast host, you get pitched a lot of like, put my person on, put my person
like
on.
10 a day, but yeah.
Oh, at least. And a lot of them are like, wah, wah, and you don't look at them again. But I had one that stood out a little bit, and then they followed up, and it was just a more creative pitch than I had seen before. And so this person, I look into them and they're like,
what was the pitch? What was creative about it? Do you remember?
I just like, actually the way it was like way more personalized of a message than the canned, like, insert podcast name here, insert guest name here. You know what I mean? That made it stand out. And so I look into this person, and first of all, I had never had a male guest on my show before. My show was initially created for moms to talk about like entrepreneurship and running a business and living a life and value, like keeping your family top priority. And so, but this guy is a dad. He has 5 daughters actually. So I was like, okay, we can go there. We can bring that part into it. But he also owns a helicopter and has like house parties with Post Malone and has like people on his stage like Ed Milet and Russell Brunson and big names, and like has had 7,000 people events. And I'm like, okay, so he wants to talk to me. He didn't have a clue, actually, that he was being pitched to my show. His name is Keaton Hoskins. He's also known as The Muscle on Instagram. He was famous for a TV show. I think it was called Diesel Brothers or something like that. Anyways, I just talked to him about like ambition and how to grow. And we had a really great open and raw conversation about how he, ended up divorced and all of this because he was chasing money, and how to shift that perspective of success.
Listen, if you have 5 daughters, I don't blame them.
Yeah.
You need some funds for 5 kids. But
yeah, I know. So anyways, that ended up being a really great conversation. And it was like, as a result of me initially starting my own visibility efforts for myself, because I got some media coverage, which is what I'm pretty sure got my show on the radar of this agency that was pitching him. And then Keaton casually says, oh yeah, I'm just going to be on Joe Rogan next. And I'm like, yep, same thing.
It's equivalent pretty much.
Basically the same as my entrepreneur school show. So he was a great guest. That was a great conversation. And I just love all of my guests because we talk about like reality and things that actually work, and not, flighty strategies or things that are going to burn you out. So
I love that. The last question I was going to ask was some of your favorite resources. I mean, it applies to the podcast, but it could be books, mentors, whether distant mentors or actual business mentors or other podcasts that you like, or all the above? What are some of your favorite resources that you or go to for you over the years?
Yeah, so I suck at reading books. I have like many half-read books, and so I'm now trying to get more audiobooks and definitely like podcasts and stuff like that. Cubicle the CEO is one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. Ellen Yin is a fantastic host, and she brings on guests and just like does case studies of things like with real numbers and real results, which is really awesome to listen to. And I'm going to shout out a mentor who I've worked with personally and just hosted an event that I attended, which was incredible. Her name is Jordan Gill. She's the host of Systems Saved Me. It's a podcast. That's her business name. That's where you can find her on social media as well. But she just brought together an incredible group of people in Dallas in September. And it was just pure collaboration and pure like genuine connections. And so finding those like smaller groups to get to be part of is incredible, because those relationships, I know, like some of them have already turned into podcast guesting collabs, and those are the things that are, like I was talking about, the seeds that you're planting that eventually lead to, I'm recording 4 podcasts this week. And when those all come out, I'm going to get all kinds of attention coming back to me as a result of that. But it's about being proactive as well.
Totally. I want to be the first one to thank you, Kelly. This has been great. Thanks for sharing your journey, your story, lessons. Everyone can check out ksco.ca, ksco.ca to learn more and more episodes of the podcast. And we'll see everyone next time. Kelly, thanks so much.
Thanks, Jeremy.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like $100 grand.